They threw him overboard like refuse, but the sea had other plans, and when Finn crawled onto that cursed island, clutching an ancient map, he discovered that sometimes the greatest treasures choose their own masters. The cold Atlantic waters closed over Finn's head like a liquid grave. Above him, the hull of the Crimson Revenge grew smaller as he sank, the cruel laughter of his former crewmates echoing through the water. His lungs burned as he fought his way back to the surface, gasping and choking on salt water and betrayal. "Swim to shore if you can, coward," Captain Mordecai's voice carried across the waves. "Maybe the fish will find more use for you than we ever did." Finn treaded water, watching the ship that had been his home for 3 years sail away into the morning mist. His crime? Refusing to participate in the massacre of a merchant vessel's passengers, women and children, who'd surrendered and begged for mercy. When he'd spoken against it, the crew had branded him soft, weak, unworthy of the pirate's life. The nearest land was a dark smudge on the horizon, barely visible through the ocean spray. Finn was a strong swimmer, but the distance seemed impossible. Still, what choice did he have? Die trying to reach shore, or die floating in the endless blue? He began to swim. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, beating down on his exposed head and shoulders. His arms felt like lead, his legs cramping from the constant motion. Salt water had chapped his lips raw, and his throat burned with thirst. More than once he considered simply letting go, allowing the sea to claim him, but something kept him moving forward. Perhaps it was stubbornness, or perhaps it was the memory of his sister's face, little Mary, who'd believed her big brother would return from the sea with tales of adventure and pockets full of gold. He couldn't let her down, not like this. When the sun reached its zenith, Finn felt his strength finally giving out. His strokes became weaker, more erratic. The dark island seemed no closer than when he'd started. Despair crept into his heart like cold water into a sinking ship. That's when he saw the wreckage. A piece of ship's mast floated nearby, barnacle-encrusted and weathered by countless storms. Finn summoned his last reserves of strength and grabbed hold of it, gasping with relief as the makeshift float bore his weight. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to keep him alive a little longer. As he clung to the debris, something caught his eye. Wedged into a crack in the wood was a metal cylinder, green with age and corrosion. Curious, despite his exhaustion, Finn worked it free. It was a map case, sealed with wax and wrapped in oiled leather. Inside was a chart unlike any he'd ever seen. The parchment was ancient, its edges brown with age, but the ink remained clear and bold. It showed a chain of islands in the Caribbean, marked with symbols that made Finn's heart race. Skull and crossbones, treasure chests, and at the center of it all, a large X marked with the words Blackheart's Hoard in flowing script. Captain Erasmus Blackheart. Every pirate in the Caribbean knew the name, though few believed the stories. They said he'd been the most successful buccaneer of the previous century, accumulating a fortune that dwarfed the treasures of kings. When the Spanish Armada finally cornered him, he'd vanished without a trace, taking his legendary hoard with him. And now Finn held what appeared to be the map to that treasure. The discovery gave him new strength. Using the mast as a float, he kicked toward the island with renewed determination. The map was his lifeline, not just to survival, but to something far greater. If it was genuine, it could change everything. The sun was setting when Finn finally felt sand beneath his feet. He crawled onto the beach like a half-drowned rat, collapsing on the warm sand and gasping with exhaustion. The map case remained clutched in his hand, its contents safe despite his ordeal. The island was small and uninhabited, covered in dense jungle and ringed by treacherous reefs. Finn could see why ships might wreck here. The rocks were like teeth, ready to tear apart any vessel that came too close. He was lucky to have made it to the beach at all. As night fell, Finn gathered driftwood and started a fire. The flames felt like salvation after his long hours in the cold water. He spread the map out carefully, studying it by firelight. The more he examined it, the more convinced he became of its authenticity. The details were too precise, too specific to be a fake. According to the chart, Blackheart's treasure was hidden on an island called Devil's Crown, about 200 miles southeast of his current position. The map showed the exact location of the hoard, along with warnings about the island's defenses. Apparently, Blackheart had been as paranoid as he was successful. Finn spent 3 days on the island, surviving on coconuts and rainwater, while he planned his next move. The map was worthless without a ship, and he was just one man against the vast ocean. But as he studied the chart more closely, he noticed something interesting. Several of the smaller islands were marked as safe harbors, places where Blackheart's allies had once operated. If any of those havens still existed, they might be his best chance of finding a crew willing to take the risk. On the 4th day, salvation arrived in the form of a merchant vessel blown off course by a storm. Finn lit a signal fire and was rescued by the crew of the Mary Catherine, a trading ship bound for Port Royal. He spun them a tale about being the sole survivor of a shipwreck, keeping the map hidden beneath his shirt. Port Royal was exactly what Finn needed, a den of pirates, smugglers and cutthroats, where a man with the right information could find backing for almost any venture. But it was also dangerous. The wrong word in the wrong ear could get him killed, or worse, could lead to someone stealing his map. Finn spent his first week in port working the docks, listening to tavern gossip and learning who could be trusted. The pirate community was tight-knit but fractured, with various captains commanding small fleets and constantly feuding over territory and treasure. The break he needed came when he overheard a conversation in the Salty Dog Tavern. 3 pirates sat in a corner booth, their voices low but their frustration evident. "Damn Spaniards have been patrolling the shipping lanes for weeks," grumbled a scarred man with gold teeth. "Can't get near a decent prize without running into a warship." "Aye," agreed his companion, a woman with intricate tattoos covering her arms. "And Captain Voss has been recruiting every available sailor for his fleet. Soon there won't be enough crew to go around." The 3rd pirate, a young man about Finn's age, shook his head. "What we need is a big score, something that would set us up for life and let us retire from this game." Finn saw his opportunity. He approached their table, the map case hidden beneath his coat. "Forgive the interruption, but I couldn't help overhearing. You're looking for a big score?" The scarred pirate looked him up and down dismissively. "And what would a dock rat like you know about treasure?" "More than you might think," Finn replied, pulling out the map case, just enough for them to see it. "I have something that might interest you, something that could make us all rich beyond our wildest dreams." The woman leaned forward, her eyes sharp with interest. "What kind of something?" Finn glanced around the tavern, making sure no one else was listening. "The kind that comes with a map and a legend. The kind that men have died looking for." The 3 pirates exchanged glances. The young one spoke first. "I'm Jake Winters. This is Sarah Red McKenna and Marcus Goldtooth Briggs. If you're talking about what I think you're talking about, you're either very brave or very stupid." "Maybe both," Finn admitted, "but I'm also very serious. I have Blackheart's map." The reaction was immediate. Marcus nearly choked on his rum, while Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her cutlass. Jake just stared, his mouth hanging open. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "Blackheart's treasure is a myth, a story to entertain drunk sailors." "Is it?" Finn carefully unrolled a corner of the map, just enough to show the distinctive skull and crossbones symbol and Blackheart's signature. "This says otherwise." Sarah leaned closer, her experienced eye examining the parchment. "The paper's old enough," she admitted. "And the ink, I've never seen anything quite like it." "Where did you get this?" Jake demanded. Finn had prepared for this question. "Found it in a wreck off Dead Man's Cay. The ship had been there for decades, maybe longer. This was sealed in the captain's cabin." It wasn't entirely a lie. He had found it in wreckage, just not where he claimed. Marcus was still skeptical. "Even if it's real, what makes you think we'd be interested? We don't even have a ship." "But you have connections," Finn replied. "You know people who do have ships." And more importantly, you have the skills I need. I'm a decent sailor, but I'm no pirate. I need partners who know how to handle themselves in a fight. And what's our cut? Sarah asked bluntly. Equal shares, Finn said without hesitation. 4 ways, split evenly. The 3 pirates looked at each other again, and Finn could see the greed warring with caution in their eyes. Finally, Jake spoke up. We'll need to see the whole map, and we'll need to verify its authenticity. Agreed, Finn nodded. But not here. Too many ears and eyes. They arranged to meet the next morning at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Finn spent a sleepless night wondering if he was making a terrible mistake. These people were criminals, after all. What was to stop them from simply killing him and taking the map? But when morning came, he realized he had no choice. The map was useless without a crew, and he was running out of time and money. If he was going to make his move, it had to be now. The warehouse was perfect for their purposes, isolated, secure, and large enough to spread out the map properly. Finn arrived first, his heart pounding with nervous energy. When the others showed up, they brought someone with them. This is Elena Vasquez, Sarah explained, gesturing to an elderly woman with silver hair and knowing eyes. She's an expert on old maps and documents. If anyone can tell us if this is genuine, it's her. Elena examined the map with a magnifying glass, studying every detail with the intensity of a scholar. She tested the paper, examined the ink under different lights, and even sniffed the parchment. After what felt like hours, she finally looked up. It's real, she said simply. This map is at least a century old, possibly older. The ink is made from a formula that hasn't been used in decades. And these symbols, she pointed to various markings on the chart. They match other examples of Blackheart's work that I've seen in Spanish archives. The warehouse fell silent. Finn felt a surge of vindication mixed with terror. The map was real, which meant the treasure was real, but it also meant that the dangers Blackheart had marked on the chart were likely real as well. So, what's the plan? Marcus asked, his earlier skepticism replaced by barely contained excitement. Finn spread the map out fully, pointing to the various islands marked on the chart. According to this, Blackheart established a network of safe harbors throughout the Caribbean. Some of them might still be active. We start there, recruit a crew, and acquire a ship. And then, Jake prompted, then we sail to Devil's Crown and claim what's ours. Sarah traced the route with her finger. It won't be easy. Half the Caribbean is crawling with Spanish warships, and the other half is controlled by pirates who won't take kindly to competition. That's why we need to be smart about this, Finn replied. We don't announce our intentions. We gather our resources quietly, move carefully, and strike when we're ready. What about Captain Voss? Marcus asked. He's been consolidating power in these waters. If he gets wind of what we're planning, then we make sure he doesn't, Finn said firmly. This stays between us until we're ready to move. Elena rolled up the map carefully and handed it back to Finn. Be careful, young man. Blackheart's treasure has claimed many lives over the years. Make sure yours isn't one of them. As the old woman left, the 4 conspirators looked at each other with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They were about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime, if they survived it. So, Sarah said with a grin that was equal parts anticipation and menace, when do we start? Finn looked down at the map case in his hands, thinking of the crew that had cast him out, the sister he'd promised to return to, and the treasure that could change everything. Tomorrow, he said. We start tomorrow. 3 months later, Captain Finn stood on the quarterdeck of the Sea Serpent, watching Devil's Crown rise from the morning mist like a dark promise. The island was exactly as Blackheart's map had described it, a volcanic peak surrounded by treacherous reefs, with only one safe approach through a narrow channel marked by ancient stone pillars. The journey to this moment had been anything but easy. Their first attempt to recruit a crew had nearly ended in disaster when Captain Voss's spies infiltrated their operation. They'd barely escaped Port Royal with their lives, forced to flee in a stolen fishing boat with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the precious map. But adversity had forged them into a real team. Sarah's tactical brilliance, Marcus's connections in the smuggling trade, and Jake's natural leadership had combined with Finn's determination to create something neither of them could have achieved alone. They'd spent weeks island hopping through the Caribbean, following Blackheart's network of safe harbors. Most had been abandoned or destroyed, but a few still operated as hidden pirate bases. At each stop, they'd recruited carefully, a gunner here, a navigator there, building their crew one trusted soul at a time. The breakthrough had come when they discovered that one of Blackheart's former lieutenants, a grizzled pirate named Iron Tom Kellaway, was still alive and operating from a secret base in the Bahamas. The old man had been skeptical at first, but when Finn showed him the map, his eyes had lit up with recognition and greed. I remember that chart," Iron Tom had wheezed, his voice rough from decades of rum and tobacco. "Helped draw it myself back in the day. But you'll need more than paper to claim that treasure, boy. Devil's Crown has guardians." "What kind of guardians?" Finn had asked. "The kind that don't die easy," Iron Tom had replied cryptically. "Blackheart was paranoid, you see. Didn't trust anyone, not even his own crew. He made sure his treasure would be protected long after he was gone." Despite the warnings, Iron Tom had agreed to join their expedition. His knowledge of Blackheart's methods and the location's defenses was invaluable. More importantly, his reputation had helped them recruit additional crew members and acquire the Sea Serpent, a fast, well-armed brigantine perfect for their needs. Now, as they approached their destination, Finn felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. The crew looked to him for guidance, trusting him to lead them to fortune rather than death. It was a responsibility he'd never asked for, but one he'd learned to embrace. There, Sarah pointed toward the island's eastern shore, the channel between those two pillars, just like the map shows. Finn raised his spyglass, studying the approach. The stone pillars were massive, easily 50 feet tall and carved with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the morning light. Between them, the water was a deep, unnatural blue that spoke of hidden depths. "All hands, prepare for landing," Finn called out. "But stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." The Sea Serpent glided through the channel like a ghost ship. The water was so clear they could see the bottom, and the bones of less fortunate vessels that had tried to force their way through the reefs. Finn counted at least a dozen wrecks, their broken masts reaching toward the surface like the fingers of drowned men. As they entered the island's natural harbor, Finn noticed something odd. The water here was warm, much warmer than it should have been this far from the equator. Steam rose from the surface in places, and the air carried the sulphurous smell of volcanic activity. "The island's still active," Jake observed, joining Finn at the rail. "That could be a problem." "Or an advantage," Finn replied. "Blackheart chose this place for a reason. The volcanic activity might be part of his defenses." They anchored in the harbor and prepared to go ashore. According to the map, the treasure was hidden in a cave system near the island's peak, accessible only through a series of trials that Blackheart had designed to test worthy successors. The landing party consisted of Finn, Sarah, Marcus, Jake, Iron Tom, and 6 of their most trusted crew members. They left the rest aboard the Sea Serpent with orders to be ready for a quick departure if things went wrong. The beach was black volcanic sand that crunched under their boots like broken glass. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, but there was something wrong with them. Their fronds were too dark, their trunks twisted into unnatural shapes. Even the air felt heavy, oppressive, as if the island itself was watching them. "This place gives me the creeps," Marcus muttered, checking his pistols for the 3rd time. "Good," Iron Tom cackled. "Means Blackheart's defenses are still working." He wanted visitors to feel unwelcome. They followed a path that led inland, marked by more of the carved stone pillars. The symbols were definitely not Spanish or English. They looked older, more primitive. Some appeared to be warnings, while others seemed to be directions. "Can you read these?" Finn asked Iron Tom. The old pirate squinted at the symbols. "Some of them. Blackheart learned the markings from the island's original inhabitants, a tribe that disappeared long before the Spanish arrived. This one here means death to the unworthy. That one's a bit more cheerful. Turn back or join the bones. Encouraging, Sarah said dryly. As they climbed higher, the island's volcanic nature became more apparent. Steam vents hissed from cracks in the rock, and the ground was warm beneath their feet. In the distance, they could see the peak of the volcano, its crater glowing with a dull red light. The first trial came sooner than expected. They rounded a bend in the path and found themselves facing a wall of black stone that blocked their way completely. There was no way around it. The cliff faces on either side were too steep to climb, but carved into the wall was a series of symbols and what appeared to be a puzzle. "It's a lock," Iron Tom explained. "Blackheart was fond of these. You have to solve the riddle to proceed." The puzzle consisted of a series of rotating stone discs, each marked with different symbols. According to the map, the solution was hidden in a poem that Blackheart had written, "Where the sun dies in crimson flame, and the moon rises pale and cold, the worthy soul shall speak my name, and claim the prize of pirates bold." Finn studied the discs, trying to understand the pattern. The symbols seemed to represent different times of day and celestial bodies. After several minutes of experimentation, he began to see the logic. "Sunset," he said, rotating the first disc to show a symbol of the sun descending. "Moonrise." The second disc clicked into place. And Blackheart's name. The final disc bore symbols that could be arranged to spell out Erasmus. As the last symbol locked into position, the wall began to grind open, revealing a tunnel that led deeper into the island. "Well done, lad," Iron Tom grinned. "You're thinking like a pirate now." The tunnel was carved from solid rock, its walls lined with more of the mysterious symbols. Torches in iron sconces provided flickering light, though how they'd remained lit for over a century was a mystery Finn didn't want to contemplate. The second trial was more direct, a pit filled with sharpened stakes with only a narrow beam spanning the gap. But the beam was rigged with pressure plates that would trigger additional traps if stepped on incorrectly. The map provided a pattern, a specific sequence of steps that would allow safe passage. One by one, they crossed the deadly span, following Finn's careful instructions. Marcus slipped once, nearly falling into the pit, but Jake caught his arm and pulled him to safety. "How many more of these do we have to face?" Marcus gasped. "According to the map, 3 more, Finn replied. "But they get harder." The third trial tested their knowledge of pirate lore. They entered a chamber filled with treasure chests, dozens of them, each more ornate than the last. But only one contained the key to the next chamber. The others were trapped with deadly mechanisms designed to kill the greedy. The riddle was inscribed on the wall. "The greatest treasure is not gold or silver, but the trust of those who follow you." Finn studied the chests, looking for clues. Most were decorated with jewels and precious metals, clearly designed to appeal to greed. But one, tucked away in a corner, was simple wood with iron bindings. Carved into its lid was a symbol he recognized, the mark of brotherhood that pirates used to identify trusted allies. Inside the chest was a simple iron key and a note in Blackheart's handwriting. "Well chosen, brother. You understand what truly matters." The fourth trial was physical. A chamber filled with swinging blades and moving walls that required perfect timing and coordination to navigate. They had to work as a team, each member covering for the other's weaknesses. Sarah's agility, Marcus's strength, Jake's quick reflexes, and Iron Tom's experience all played crucial roles. By the time they reached the fifth and final trial, they were exhausted, battered, and running low on supplies. But they were also closer than any treasure hunter had ever come to claiming Blackheart's legendary hoard. The final chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows. At its center stood a pedestal holding a single black pearl the size of a man's fist. But between them and the pearl was a chasm that seemed to have no bottom, spanned only by a bridge made of what appeared to be human bones. "The final test," Iron Tom whispered, Blackheart called it the Bridge of Souls. Legend says it's made from the bones of every pirate who ever betrayed him. Charming, Sarah muttered. And I suppose we have to cross it? Finn consulted the map one last time. According to Blackheart's notes, the bridge would only support those who approached with pure intent, not for personal gain, but for the good of their crew and the pirate brotherhood. I'll go first, Finn decided. If the bridge holds for me, the rest of you follow one at a time. Finn, no, Jake protested. If you fall, then you turn around and get the crew out of here, Finn interrupted. But I don't think I'll fall. This whole journey has been about proving myself worthy, not just of treasure, but of leadership. This is the final test. Finn stepped onto the bridge, his heart pounding. The bones creaked under his weight, but held firm. Step by step, he made his way across the chasm, thinking not of gold or glory, but of his crew, the people who had trusted him to lead them to fortune. When he reached the other side, the black pearl began to glow with an inner light. As he lifted it from the pedestal, the chamber was suddenly filled with the sound of grinding stone. Hidden doors opened in the walls, revealing the true treasure. Not just gold and jewels, but weapons, maps, and artifacts that represented the accumulated wealth of the most successful pirate in Caribbean history. But more importantly, carved into the wall behind the pedestal was a final message from Blackheart himself. To the one who has proven worthy, this treasure is yours by right of courage, wisdom, and loyalty. Use it well, and remember that the greatest captain is one who serves his crew as much as they serve him. The sea is vast, and there are always new horizons to explore. May fair winds fill your sails, and may your legend grow with each passing tide. As his crew joined him in the treasure chamber, their faces lit with wonder and greed, Finn realized that the real transformation had already taken place. He was no longer the coward who had been cast into the sea. He was a captain, a leader, a man worthy of the trust his crew had placed in him. "Well, Captain," Sarah said with a grin, "what are your orders?" Finn looked around at the vast treasure, then at the faces of his loyal crew. "We take what we can carry and leave the rest. This treasure has been here for over a century. It can wait a little longer." "Leave it," Marcus sputtered. "Are you mad?" "No," Finn replied calmly. "I'm thinking like a captain. We can't carry all of this, and trying to do so would only make us targets. We take enough to set ourselves up properly, buy better ships, recruit more crew, establish our own network of safe harbors. The rest stays here until we're strong enough to claim it properly." Iron Tom nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true pirate king, Blackheart would be proud. As they loaded their packs with carefully selected treasures, Finn felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with gold or jewels. He had proven himself, not just to his crew, but to himself. The boy who had been mocked and cast aside was gone forever, replaced by a man who understood that true leadership came not from taking, but from giving. 6 months later, Captain Finn commanded a fleet of 5 ships and over 200 loyal pirates. His flag, a black pearl on a field of crimson, was respected and feared throughout the Caribbean. But he never forgot the lesson of Blackheart's treasure, that the greatest wealth was the trust of those who chose to follow you into the unknown. And sometimes, late at night, when the sea was calm and the stars were bright, he would think about the crew that had cast him overboard, wondering if they ever realized that their cruelty had created the very legend that now ruled the waters they once called home. The sea had indeed had other plans for Finn, plans that transformed a mocked coward into a pirate captain whose name would be whispered in taverns and sung in shanties for generations to come.